Well, so here's the deal. I'm here to talk about actionable gamification. And what I mean by that is gamification that is going to drive habit change and behavior change for your customers or whomever your audience is. The context I want to do this, I've given a number of presentations on gamification, and they get super theoretical, and I thought this one would be a lot more interesting if we focus case study-wise on what I think is one of the best examples of gamification out there, which is Peloton. So the way this presentation is going to work, the first half of it, I'm just going to do some definitions, help kind of level set everybody up on what makes for good gamification, what do we know about it, what are the theories around it. And then as quickly as I can, I want to dive into Peloton. So that's kind of the approach here. So yeah, this is me. My day job is at Miami University. I'm the director of the Armstrong Institute here. The Armstrong Institute is an interdisciplinary group. We study digital marketing, social media marketing, games, gamification, VR, AR, XR, web and app development. We've got about, 900 students majoring in it right now, and have branch programs in San Francisco, Luxembourg, and right there downtown in Cincinnati at Centrifuge as well. So that's what I do. That's my day job. What I also do, though, is I talk about gamification. Now, the Peloton example that we're going to talk about here today is actually the core of a book that will be coming out next year on gamification that I'm writing. And so this is actually one of the first chances I've had to kind of road test it here and appreciate any sort of feedback around how this goes. So to tell you a little more about me in a very confessional sense, I have always been in really bad shape. I was not a sports guy. I was a classic geek, pasty, pale, and with very little muscle. I had a heart attack when I was 44, and I knew, I had to get in shape, right? Like, the doctor made it clear and needed to do cardio, right? All that kind of thing. And so I got an elliptical, and I used the elliptical for about a month, and then, was less often, and then eventually it just trailed away, gone, right? And that is the consistent pattern with pretty much every exercise plan I have ever had. Every New Year's resolution I have ever had, right, have all been these disasters where I really never did what I needed to do to get into shape, right? And there's lots of reasons why that happens. The research on this kind of thing says it for this list of 12 things here, right, are kind of the top ones that you typically hear about why people don't exercise. I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't know what are the right exercises. I'm too old. I can't get it to work with my routine, or it's cold out, right? Everyone's got these excuses around why they don't exercise. And I had all of those. And then suddenly I got a Peloton. I have to say, I personally would say it's one of the best purchases I've made in a very long time. I love my Peloton. But the most important thing to really take away here is that the reason the Peloton worked for me was not the hardware. I mean, it's a stationary bicycle of sorts, right? It's got a nice iPad-looking thing on the front of it. What made it work for me was all about the experience. That it is, I think, hands down, some of the best gamified experiences I have ever seen. And I feel quite confident, as do my colleagues, that the Peloton folks have some super awesome experts in the fields of gamification and psychology that are driving this interface. And so it's the example I'm going to talk about here today. But before I dive too much into that, I want to kind of level set us all up on what gamification is. Then we'll go into the principles in action and what are some of the insights for companies and brands. So gamification. Right? Gamification for us means that we are, here, I'll bring it up so you can read it a little bit better. It's the process of leveraging habit-forming behavior right? Behavior change techniques. So we're going to talk in a minute about what we mean by this, but habit forming behavior change techniques that are intrinsically motivating people to engage. Now, the key piece I want to emphasize there is the word intrinsically. Bad gamification emphasizes extrinsic far too much. And I know there's always a little bit of extrinsic in a lot of different gamification, but bad gamification is largely extrinsic. So for example, at Miami University, we have a point system. We have a gamified way to get healthier. But what it functionally is a bunch of hoops of fire that I need to jump through in order to get a lower premium. Right? That's not a game, right? I have to play it. I'm basically being forced to play it, and I'm being motivated extrinsically. Good gamification happens when you are intrinsically motivated, and we're going to come to Daniel Pink here in a minute, so you can see where I'm going. Now, I've used this phrase game mechanics a little bit here, and we're going to talk about it quite a lot. What a game mechanic is it's the toolbox for gamification strategy. So game mechanics are well-worn techniques that drive engagement in games. So for example, a leaderboard, right? Leaderboards are a thing that are in games. We can see rankings, that kind of thing. But there's a leaderboard also on the Peloton and all kinds of gamified experiences, even though they're not games. So what game mechanics are these elements of games that we know work well to drive engagement, but we're going to apply the game mechanic in a non-game setting. The last thing I said on the slide, it'll be the horse I flog for this whole presentation, that gamification is not about making a game. I can't tell you how many companies, how many folks I've talked to who are interested in trying to drive gamification, and that's where they go first. That great gamification often has nothing to do with the game. It doesn't look like a game. It might not even be digital. So don't get locked into the notion that what you want to do for gamification means you very specifically need to make a game. That may not be the case. So there are thousands of these game mechanics out there, these behaviors that happen in games. We're going to focus on these 12. And I'm focusing on these 12 really in a fairly arbitrary way to just give you a sense that some game mechanics are fairly universal. So for example, fast feedback is a game mechanic, getting immediate feedback in a response to an action. We're going to see some examples of that shortly. Being transparent and knowing where you stand, badges, leveling up, points, saving your progress along the way, regenerating your health, allowing for failure, collaborating with the team, only being able to accomplish something when the team does something, right? These things are all gamification mechanics. So these are mechanics you could find on Xbox games, but what we're going to be talking about here is how do we find these mechanics in the ways that we're trying to engage our customers and our audience with whatever that we're trying to do. Now, I used this phrase behavior change technique earlier. It's actually a very specific thing in psychology. So there's this whole field of research. Rochelle Ramsey at UC and I have talked quite a lot about it. We presented a bit about this. There is this deep body of research on how you get people to change behaviors, particularly in the context of health. So think, how do I get kids to take their medicine every day? Right? It's a behavior change. In the corporate side of things, we call these things habit formation, right? How do I get my customer into the habit of ordering a new razor blade every 4 weeks? And so there's a real obvious bridge between what we know scientifically drives psychological behavior and drives people to change their behavior and what we're going to talk about in terms of gamification. And that's actually a big piece of this book that we're doing for next year. What I'd like to ask, these 3 bullets here, 4 bullets, are just so you understand how portions of your life are already being gamified in ways that you probably haven't thought about before. So if you've ever made a reservation for an airline simply because you need more frequent flyer miles, I actually, not recently, but somewhat recently, took a flight at the end of the year just to go somewhere and come back because I knew it would level me up to the next level of rewards in my frequent flyer program, right? That means I have been gamified, right? My behaviors have changed as a result of these incentives. If you look at the miles per gallon on your dashboard and sort of play with drafting behind cars or choose a hotel, or even feel in a sort of OCD way that you have to complete that LinkedIn profile, these are all behavior change techniques that are gamified, right? Now, none of this is new. My parents played with S&H green stamps. I remember as a kid, I used to lick them, probably getting some kind of, George Costanza fatal illness, and putting them into those books that we got to turn in, right? I mean, that's from the 1800s. Boy Scout badges are badges. We know what that is. In fact, the very first book that used the word gamification, this book here, The Game of Work, came out in the 80s, right? So none of this stuff is new. We see it now on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the completion of your LinkedIn profile, your Kroger Plus card, where you get points and levels and rewards and differential pricing in what you do. If you've ever used Duolingo to learn a foreign language, it is awesome. It is an incredible app. My son just got into Miami, and he placed out of his whole first year of German simply because of what he did on Duolingo, which, as an aside, I just learned what their business model is, which is super fascinating. It's a free app, but what they actually make money doing is translations. And so companies hire them to do translations. They outsource that translation to the very best people on their platform and get that free work done. And that's what pays for it. Fascinating, right? And then the last image here is from one of our cars, which is a Chevy Volt. And you can see the green, yellow, red there on that dashboard. That's kind of like what Stefan's talking about here in the chat about long trips, right? What it does is it lets you know whether you're being super efficient or not efficient. And so you adjust your driving based on this fast feedback. This is gamification, pure and simple, right? Even in COVID-19, we have gamification. So I'm hoping you can see these badges. I'm going to zoom in so you can see them a little bit better. I actually did buy these. You can get them on Amazon. I think they're awesome. But badges, right, are commonly used in things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and we see it all the time. Now, the gamification market space is pretty huge. About half of all startups have indicated that they use some form of gamification in their business model or onboarding or growth hacking. What we also know is that gamified experiences have 40% more customer engagement. People spend 30% more time browsing on websites that are gamified. And if you gamify your onboarding for your app or your website, the retention is actually 70% higher than non-gamified onboarding. In retail, 87% of retailers plan to use gamification in the next 5 years, and loyalty cards are pretty much the big thing that they're doing. But we're also seeing retail doing variable pricing. We're seeing off-menu items like Chipotle's quesadilla, and even having visible achievements like badges. So Tesla, if you refer, I don't remember, 2 or 3 people who end up buying a Tesla, given that you own one, they send you a set of wheels that only people who are their VIP referrers get to have on their car. So you got to be in the know, but you're wearing that kind of badge of success in what you do. And lastly, retail's been seeing a lot more of this kind of spin to win pricing. So as you check out, at some point in the checkout process, you spin a wheel to see what percentage you're going to get off on your shopping cart, right? I think the interesting thing about that, there was a study recently in the Journal of Marketing that showed that when you do these kind of spin to win or variations of it, but essentially an uncertain coupon, a coupon you don't know what it's going to be, if you do that as part of the checkout, people buy more things and they spend more money. And they do that because they've been gamified here, because of the experience of the randomness, the roll of the dice, and everything that's associated with that. So I talked a little earlier about intrinsic motivation. I'm just going to hit it super quick. I'm guessing most of you are familiar with Daniel Pink's work in this space, but I just want to hammer it home because what makes gamification work is intrinsic motivation, period. And so as you think about your customer, as you think about who you want to speak to with a gamified strategy, you need to be thinking about whether or not your gamification is helping them develop a sense of mastery, that they're super good at something or smart or good looking or whatever it is, they are superlative in it. Are you giving them some sense of authorship and customization? I mentioned yesterday in my Signal talk about how Fortnite makes $150 million a month on customization, basically, right? And then lastly, purpose. Is the gamification that you've built driving people to do something they believe in, that they think hard about and think is really important? Think like Tom's shoes type of thing, right? So that sort of in a nutshell comes to life in this, one of my favorite examples of gamification, which is the speed lottery. So the way this works is whenever your car drives past this traffic camera, if you are going under the speed limit, you get a thumbs up and a little green, like you see here, the green 20. And the speed camera takes a picture of your license plate. When you go past the speed camera and you're speeding, you get the thumbs down, it's in red, and you get a ticket. All the money that's raised from the tickets gets then delivered to somebody who was driving under the speed limit in the form of a lottery. So by doing this, they found that people actually, the average speed on this road went down by 10 kilometers an hour. People behaved better. It's a brilliant idea. It's fun. It makes a ton of sense, right? And it aligns incentives. This is what good gamification looks like. So I've got a quiz here, and all I'm going to ask right now is that you just maybe jot down this URL. I can give it back to you in the chat, or someone can type it into the chat. I do not want you to do it now. It's going to take you about 10 minutes to do it, and I am far too narcissistic to give that up. But once you're done with this, check out this link. It's part of a research project that I'm working on around identifying the type of gamer. And what I've done is kind of taken a bit of the research around games, video games specifically, and applying it more towards the customer consumer marketing space. And the punchline I want to give you here, I mean, you're going to get the punchline for you. So this is the results for someone who turns out to be an explorer. There's all these different types in this quiz. But the key thing I want you to take away here is that people are motivated differently when they're in gamified experiences. So I did an early beta test of this at a sort of pre-Signal event about a year ago downtown. And when we did this, a lot of the players, I'm not going to tell you what they were, but they were all the same type, right? And that's because they're all P&G people, right? Like there's some sort of homogeneity of strategic thinking that goes on in the organization. And so these typographies, I guess we'll call them taxonomy, of the way that people behave in games gets you thinking a bit more about people who think differently than you. Some people do not play games to win. Some people play games just to hang out with other people. Some people play games just to learn new things. So there are all these different motivations that drive what people do. And this is just a little glimpse of an insight into what motivates men and women who play games, right? Men play games for destruction, competition, right? Completion. Women play games largely for completion and fantasy. And there's an entire conversation we can all have about that one during the Q&A, but it gets to the point that you can't think about your customer in this very kind of singular way. You've got to think deeply about the ways in which your customer is varied in the way that they approach a gamified experience. Now, before I dive into Peloton, I want to give you the traps, right? These are the things you should not do if you want to get into gamification. Number one, what's called PBL gamification, points, badges, and leaderboards. That's low-hanging fruit. And it's not to say that those things don't work. I'm about to tell you about Peloton, which has all three of those things. But if all you're going to do is make a leaderboard of your sales team, that's not gamification. That's just a different way to do your performance evaluation. So don't jump to it. Do it because the mechanic makes sense. Secondly, don't get excited about the shiny new thing. Oh, AR is coming down the road. We're going to make an AR gamified experience for our customers. Right? The shiny thing is often unreliable. It doesn't necessarily drive what you want to do. I have seen some of the best gamification being done with physical cards, not even anything digital, right? To the point of the last bullet there, don't think you need to make a game. Keep your eye on the behavior that you want to change and how you can drive that and what the research says about how the psychology of this behavior change tends to play out. Now, my Peloton. So I'm going to talk about 15 different game mechanics that are part of it, but there are, I am sure, some multiple of that are driven in all kinds of pieces of this world. I want to give you a sense, though, of how this does this, and I want you to remember that what we're trying to do is understand how this brand has made a gamified experience that appeals to all kinds of people, not just the ones who want to win, not just the ones who like being social. And how do they do that? By creating a non-game customer experience. All right. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Peloton, like I said, it's a stationary bicycle. Basically, it's a spin bicycle. There's not a whole lot to it. Let me just go back just to point out sort of the physical pieces of it. The only thing that you change as you're cycling through it is that little red knob, and it makes the road a lot heavier. So when you turn the knob up, it makes it feel hard, and when you turn it back, it makes the road a lot easier to ride on. You clip into the pedals, which was something I had never done before, but now I love that. Other than that, it's kind of everything you think a bicycle would ought to be. This is what the interface looks like. And this is where we start talking about all these brilliant bits. So I'm just going to describe the interface here, and then we're going to dive down into it. But at the top, you can see there's a progress bar that not only is telling you how far along you are in the class, but also telling you what part of the class you are in. If you have a heart monitor on, your heart rate will show up on that left side, and you'll get an indication of where you are zone-wise with your heart rate. On the right side there, you'll see the leaderboard. It's based on, let's just call it points right now. We'll talk in a minute about what I mean by that. And then at the bottom, you've got all this data. So the left side tells you how fast you're pedaling. The right side tells you how much you turn that red knob. So at 42 there, it probably feels like you're walking in mud. So pulling your feet up is actually hard. That's a somewhat high amount, at least for someone in as bad shape as me, of resistance. And then those two numbers get mushed together for the watts, which is the middle number there. And the watts are your points. And so the leaderboards here are all about your watts that you're contributing. Now, Peloton experiences happen in two different ways. You can do them live. So there is a calendar. You can go do a live class, sort of schedule it, put an alarm on your phone, show up, and you can be cycling with a bunch of other people live real time. But most folks on the platform use pre-recorded. So each of these live sessions gets recorded, and then there is hundreds and hundreds of them, and you can go and ride any of them at any point in time, and you can choose them based on genre of music or who you like as an instructor. And so those are the two ways and it's important you know that because it drives pieces of this gamification. So let's talk first about our first game mechanic, fast feedback. So fast feedback means getting feedback about your performance. And I would point you to the cadence in this picture. You'll notice above the cadence, it says 90 to 100. That is what is being cued here. So the instructor is cueing you to pedal that fast. And the little yellow arrow next to the 90 says you got to speed up. And when you hit that 90 to 100, those numbers turn yellow for you, and they let you know that you've hit it. Immediate feedback about your performance. This is like what we were talking about with your miles per gallon, right? Immediate feedback that's then driving you to behave better because you think, oh, well, I need to get this yellow. I need to move this up. I'm getting this feedback, which allows me to perform better. Can you give feedback allowing your customers to perform better? Now, mechanic number 2 is the one I've already mentioned, the leaderboard. That's your points, your rankings. So the leaderboard has two different pieces. I mentioned there's the live sessions, And then there's these recorded ones. Now, in a recorded session, there are two different leaderboards, the one that says all time and the one that says here now. Now, the here now one means that other people are riding in this pre-recorded class with you. When I do pre-recorded classes, there are easily 40 or 50 people riding with me at that point in time. And I can see where I stand on that leaderboard, or I can look at the leaderboard of everyone who's ever played it. But the super cool thing about this, and I'm hoping the animation plays here. I don't think it will with this Prezi thing. Anyway, you're missing my awesome animated GIF. But there is a feature which lets you filter the leaderboard by gender, by age. And so thinking about a leaderboard not as a, right, because here I am, I'm in terrible shape, and there are all these professional riders on here. Like, you know, when I look at, typically when I am looking at a class that, you know, 20, 30,000 people have taken, I'm going to be somewhere in the 10 to 15,000 level in that list. Not very encouraging for me. But if I can filter that list for the people who are a lot like me, of my age, it helps me get a better sense of what that competitive space should be. So it's a very, very smart leaderboard. Mechanic number 3 is building community. And we're going to talk about this as in part of a couple other mechanics as well. But the first place we see this is with the here now, that while you're riding, you are riding with other people. So in my COVID isolation in the basement of my house, I get to ride with other people every day, right? And so, and they are my tribe. And we're going to talk in a minute about how Peloton builds that sense of tribe and community. But the first place you see it is in this here now piece. Now, when you're in the here now, you have the opportunity, oh, my animations aren't working. You would see the animation here. You get to touch, there's a thing called the high five, right? And the high five is when other people are riding at the same time as you, and you can touch their icon there. So Easy Rider there, if we touched Mr. Sunglasses' head there, it would send a high five to him and encourage him. And so when you're riding with other people, part of the culture is to encourage people and support them as they are struggling. So you might high five people at the bottom of the leaderboard. You might high five people who are really close to you and you keep going up and down, but they're creating a mechanic to support and encourage people. Support and encouragement is a massive behavior change driver. And this is done really well. So when you get a high five, this is what it looks like, right? So Hidden Hill Mama high five me. There's the little hand next to her is what allows me to quickly high five her back, because it's actually hard to touch the screen while you're riding really hard and sweating really hard. But brilliant support and encouragement mechanic. Mechanic number 4 for support and encouragement. Last thing I wanted to say about that was that the high fives, while it seems kind of this casual thing, it is so brilliant, because they've got an algorithm in there that encourages you to high five certain people, particularly when they're at a certain milestone where you're trying to give that positive feedback that they've stuck with it this long. So you can see on the screen here that there's a prompt for me to say, hey, high five this person, it's their 10th ride. So not only do you decide who to high five, you get some prompts from the algorithm that is very intentionally trying to target people that it's trying to pull through this funnel, if you want to call it, right? Keep doing the thing we want them to do. Mechanic number 5 is self-definition. It's actually one of the most powerful game mechanics to say, here's who I am. This is why people spend 150 million on Fortnite, right? They want their character to be them. So Peloton lets you create, I think it's like 7 or 11, a bunch of different hashtags. And once you create these hashtags for your profile or join a hashtag that someone else has created, you're part of that tribe, right? You're saying, for example, I have right now, my number 1 hashtag is Black Lives Matter. And when I ride, I can filter and only ride with Black Lives Matter folks. And we high five the heck out of each other. And we do it, I know, because we're also high-fiving each other because we share this common belief system. And there are hashtags for people who are over 50 and people who are cancer survivors. And we're going to see in a second, there's an incredible number of these. And so I can define myself in this space. And if you can do that, I come back, right? That drives the stickiness in the gamification. Gamification mechanic 6 is completion. So there's a thing called streaks. So a streak is just what it sounds like, consecutive days that you do a Peloton session, a Peloton class. And you get these badges at, the 3-week, 5-week, 3-day, 5-day. It has these milestones, and it gives you this nice sense of completion. I'm going to tell you, I'm totally going to fess up. I was on my way to a 20-day streak. And then yesterday, this whole Signal thing totally freaked me out, and I forgot to exercise, and I blew my streak, and it was killing me today. It was killing me. Damn it. That would have been my first 20-day streak, and I totally blew it, right? So my frustration with that is the mechanic working, right? It's driving me to complete things. There's also a mechanic that they have, I'm going to switch to the bigger screen here, that I'm calling visible or public accomplishment, right? In the Peloton, they call it milestones. So there are these milestones that when you hit 25 rides, 50 rides, 75 rides, 100 rides, which is your century ride, which I just recently hit, you get these badges. But not only that, when you hit these milestones, it shares it with everybody. So when I did my 100th ride, I had, I kid you not, probably 100, 150 people high-five me while I was doing that ride. And that's because the algorithm prompted them to do this, and it's a visible public achievement. And not only do they do that way, I'm not even going to play this video because we're running short on time, but they'll call you out. So if you are in a live session and it's your milestone ride, there's a very good chance that that live instructor will say, hey, Platypus, which is what my name is on there, congratulations on your 100th ride. And I think a comet has flown across the sky for me, right? Because I got called out in front of, there are 716,000 people who have Pelotons. Right, so it's a very visible measure of accomplishment. And then to just put icing on that cake, when you hit the 100th ride, they send you a T-shirt. Now, I actually, when I said this to my wife, I said free T-shirt, and she reminded me it was not a free T-shirt. It was actually a $40 a month T-shirt. But nonetheless, it's a visible thing, and I get the badge, and I get those on the shoulder of the T-shirt. It says century, that I hit my century ride. Game mechanic 8, progress, showing how far you are in, where you are in something is a game mechanic. I'm trying to keep my eye on time here, so I'm going to move a little bit quicker. Game mechanic 9 is about goals, so and having save states. Remember I talked earlier, one game mechanic is that when you come back to the game, you pick it up where you left off. That's a really valuable game mechanic for video games. In this context, it's in terms of your personal record. So in your personal record here, what we're seeing here on this leaderboard, this person, this isn't mine, had a 45-minute personal record of 792. And at the moment, they have 591 points. So they're way behind the pace to beat their personal record here. Okay? So what this does is kind of give you this goal. Like every time you get on and you ride, you see what the best you ever did was before, and you want to beat it, right? You get a finish line. Brilliantly done. Game mechanic 10 is acknowledgement of success, and these are badges. We've talked about badges. So these badges, just to see them, I want to talk about a couple here. The ones with the circles means that you did a ride with people. And we're going to talk in a moment about what it does to encourage social experiences, because for some gamified customers, it's all about social. It isn't about the achievement at all. It isn't about the points. I know all kinds of people don't even show the leaderboard because you can actually fold it away. You don't even need to have it up there. But riding with friends, riding with 3 friends or 4 friends, that's what those badges with the circles are, the number of people that you rode with. The badge with the star means you hit your personal record, and every time you hit a personal record, you get this badge. And on the home page, all your badges are displayed, right? Like a Girl Scout sash. Mechanic number 10 is epic meaning. Epic meaning is a powerful game mechanic, doing something because it is the right thing to do, changing the world, denting the universe. That is epic meaning. And so these badges here, right, Black History Month, Pride Rides, these badges are helping to give a sense of epic meaning. It's not just that I did 10 rides. I rode in 5 different rides from LGBTQ instructors. And so I get a Pride badge, and I wear that with pride, pardoning the pun. Or Women's History Month, right? And what typically happens for these badges is the playlist of music is referring to it. All right, number 11. There's a thing called ludic loops. What a ludic loop mechanic is when you finish the thing that you think you're there to do, there's something that pulls you in to engage again. So the classic example I use in my class is Uber. When an Uber driver finishes their session, the Uber app for them gives them a push and says, hey, if you stay on the clock for 1 more hour, we're going to give you an extra 20%. On the Peloton, the ludic loop is that when you finish a class, you see a screen like this, and they're all short and they're all easy. And I got to tell you, I often do them. Game mechanic number 12 is norming relative to your peers. So you can follow and be followed, like all social media. And so I have a bunch of friends. If any of you wanted to, my Peloton buddies who are on here want to follow me, like I said, I'm Platypus with two T's in Plat. People follow each other. And what that means is you can do all kinds of higher level engaging with them. So for example, if you're following someone, you will see when they are riding. And so when you get to your bike, it'll say, hey, you know, Bob is riding in this class right now. Do you want to join him? And so it gives you that tribe in a very concrete way. And again, that peer norming is reinforced with badges. You get rewarded for riding with your friends. Last thing I'll say about peer norming is when you first get to the machine, you can see who of your friends is working out at that moment. I guess I already mentioned this, but this is what the screen looks like. All right, mechanic 13. There's only 15, and I want to try to get it done at 11:40 here, so stick with me. There are quests, epic quests. So all of these are just some quests that are out there. Typically, there's 5 or 10 different quests that are out there, and you can sign up for them. And when you sign up for them, it's an ongoing piece, right? So if you are in the December Cycling Challenge, you see how far along you are, and this is bronze, right? So if you've earned bronze, you next have silver. And then if you hit silver, you next have gold. So it keeps pulling you through the gamified experience and giving you these rewards for finishing the quest. And if we could scroll down here, you would see also your friends who are in that quest. That's about being part of a team. So if you schedule to take part in a Peloton class, when you do that, you get a notification that says something like this, that 7,800 other people have said they're in. So they're kind of counting on you, right? You've committed, everyone's committed, you've signed up for it. It's not like, maybe I'll have time in the morning. You've gone a little farther than that. You've said, I'm in. And that team responsibility gets communicated back to you, which is a game mechanic. And then lastly, the social support space here. And I got to tell you, this is one of the most comprehensive pieces of how well this works, right? So what I would do here with a little more time is click through on the link, but you all can do this when we share some of this stuff out. But what PeloBuddy has is every single hashtag, Facebook group, Twitter group on Peloton. And there is a group for everything, everything. I mean, you name it. There's Pregnant Peloton, right? There's Peloton Moms in Arizona, right? There are all these groups. Anyone can make a group. And that social community is insane. There is so much traffic on the Facebook groups related to Peloton, it would blow your mind away. I mean, any brand marketer who's trying to build community, go check those communities out and how loud the volume is, and how much they, generally speaking, are incredibly supportive of each other. The other sort of example I want to give you of the social support is that you can actually go to this site and choose your hotel based upon whether or not they have Peloton machines, because you don't want to blow your streak, right? You're on a business trip. You can't blow your streak. They've gamified you into being hooked into this machine. If you go to a hotel without that machine, you're screwed. And so there's this awesome loop here where you go to these hotels that have it. I have no doubt that Peloton and these hotels have deals to make this work out. But I use this when I travel because it makes, or when I used to travel, it makes traveling work better for me. Bottom line is gamification doesn't need to be a game. These people aren't gamers. They don't think they're playing a game. That's not what it's about. It's about leveraging this set of mechanics to be able to do things that you might not otherwise be able to do. So were I to give advice about how to gamify an experience that you're thinking about, know your audience, understand what motivates them, who are they, understand the behavior change that you're trying to drive, and identify the right behavior change techniques that might map into that. Translate those back into game mechanics, and then prototype and plan your game, test and iterate it, because you're probably wrong. Obviously, there's a lot more to hit there, but I'm trying to keep things with a little bit of free time here. This is my contact information. I appreciate the time and everyone being here. I guess we're going to do Q&A here. I'm not sure if it's verbal or with the chat, but I'm going to let someone else figure that out. Thanks. Maybe I answered everybody's questions. Could that be possible? Then it's really good. There's only 3 minutes left. Yeah, I can. So there's the Jane. I had them in one of these slides. The Jane McGonigal book. I'm going to scroll back to that slide because I'll just pull it up here for you. Reality is Broken. Why did I have her autograph and I still didn't have that. That's a good start just about the power, what games could do. There's Gamify, which is sort of sitting there as well, which is a decent book on this. Yu-Kai Chow writes a lot about this. I think his models of gamification are overly complex, to say the least, but he's got some really interesting ideas worth reading about it. I mean, this is part of why I'm writing a book on this. I don't think there are a lot of good books on this. Gamification is well known in training, so there's a bunch of gamification books about how to train people to do things, because gamification is exceptionally effective for training, but not a whole lot on the sort of consumer marketing, branding side of things. So what non-technology example of gamification used by companies do I like? I mean, honestly, I like punch cards. I'm kind of bummed that my Starbucks app, I like the idea of that kind of physical, graders used to do that too, popping the little hole. I think that's a great example of non-game or non-digital types of things. There's also like hunt and seek things, right? So you can do things in store. So customer experience pieces that are more what they call augmented reality games. So games that you actually do in the physical world that, you have to find something or solve a problem or do a thing. Yeah. So Jared asks, what's my next goal with the Peloton? I have to recover from blowing my stupid streak. I'm bummed about that, but I hit 100. So yeah, 150 is the next goal. They have a bunch of classes besides riding classes. So it works on the Roku also. So you can just sit in front of your TV and do like weightlifting and that kind of thing. And I need to do a little more upper body. I don't know if you can see this, but there's not much going on here. So an idea where to start to create an app and gamification. What comes first? What are the stages most important to begin the process of creation? All right. So Sharon's question is super complex, given that it's actually 11:45 and at some point someone's going to come in here and kick us out. But it's a methodical process, right? You don't begin by saying we need to make a game. I have sat in design thinking brainstorming sessions with far too many folks who say, hey, we need to make a game, so that kids ride their bikes more, right? Or make a game so kids take their medicine. And that's the wrong place to begin. You begin by understanding your customer. I mean, you all know this, right? Who is your customer? What matters to them? What type of gamer are they, if you can generalize? And if you can't generalize, can you build an experience that reaches all of these types of gamers? So what's the behavior change you're trying to do? And then, not to get too prescriptive, but like I said, the psychology research is really, really solid here. There is a direct map from this behavior change to this type of action. And if you can draw that line, you then start to think about how you can gamify that type of action and weave it into whatever you're trying to do. So when Stefan's asking about the nuances related to different gamer profiles, take that quiz and just answer a bunch of different ways randomly, maybe, and you'll get them all popping up. There's 4 of them that are built into that quiz. I mean, there's more types of gamers, but it'll give you at least big, broad brushstrokes of different types of gamers. But in short, some people play because they want to achieve something. Some people play because they like being social. Some people play because they like just exploring new things, right? Those are the kind of people who order loot boxes, And then there are some people who like to play to see other people lose. It's a type, right? And so that's some insight a bit into that. Hopefully that was helpful. How to connect non-tech and tech tactics for gamification for online and offline users. Yeah, that's super hard, right? Think about the dreaded QR codes, right? Which I loathe QR codes. And that's a super awkward attempt to bridge those two worlds. I'm not sure we've done it exceptionally well yet. AR is getting better at it. Apps now can pretty sort of wisely find out where you are and what you're doing. If you haven't played Pokemon Go or the Harry Potter AR game, you should. They're a lot of fun. And they'll give you at least a little sense about how those two worlds could come together. So, all right, I'm 2 minutes over. I'm just wondering, Eric, are you gonna? Can we keep going, or do I need to cut this off? He's not answering. He was there a minute ago. There is no best application of business applications. They're just interesting ones. There's a famous B2B example where one of the so Starbucks supply chain was super uneven, and it was because they have lots of little people that then aggregate to sort of bigger distributors that then give it to Starbucks. And so what this distributor did was created this gamified experience based on whether or not shipments were on time, and it was this reputation thing, and voila, it made the supply chain work like it had just been greased, and everyone made more money. That's a great case study. There's a bunch of these case studies around. In fact, if you just Google business gamification, you're going to see all kinds of stories. I'm gonna give you sort of the 2 punchlines I said before, and maybe they're a good thing to end on here, which is number 1, you don't have to make a game. Don't think I need to make a game. And number 2, you need to be thinking about what matters to your audience. Don't just do points, badges, and leaderboards. They all are useful. You saw, I just talked about it. Peloton does it awesomely. But it was not what they did. It was a byproduct of the experience they were trying to create. And so design that experience and find the right way to make it work. So thank you all. Thank you, Eric, for letting me go a little bit over time. I appreciate it. I'm glad there weren't technical issues like yesterday. I apologize for that. But keep in touch. Let me know how I can help, and we'll find a way to get this deck or something from it to you. Take care, everybody.